What's up, friends? So, as you may know, sometimes whenever I have an idea, I just like to hop on here and record an episode for you. And that happened for me this morning. And so, today, this idea is going to fit really well into a You Got 5 Minutes because it is certainly something that I have found myself, it as a barrier for myself, it is a roadblock for myself, as I imagine it does for many other people out there, including you, the listener, right now. So, the topic that I want to talk about is failure. And let's just spend 5 minutes exploring how we have met failure in the past and what the meanings that we've put on it in the past and if that really is serving us. And so I'll start off just by telling a little story about me. And the story is simply that, as I grew up as a kid, all the way up into my 20s as well, one of the things that I heard a lot from a number of different sources is do it right the first time, right? And so do it right the first time means it, as a kid, I was like, okay, I have to do things right the first time so I don't have to redo them. And that, of course, my parents, had high standards for me. It's like, that you want me to get A's and B's and stuff like that. And all of that in its intention is great and fine. And at the same time, what the do it right the first time message and the really focus on doing your best at first and all the time, what that continued to mutate itself into as I continued to grow up was, if I can't do it right the first time, then I just shouldn't do it at all. So for me, that's what happened. And so I would get to points in my life where I'd be like, well, I can't do this perfectly. I can't do this correct. So I'm not going to do anything. And it ended up being paralyzing for me. I ended up doing a whole lot of nothing because I was afraid to fail. I was afraid to do it wrong. And that it took me a long time and some coaching and therapeutic type things to understand that relationship was holding me back so much, and it was really frustrating for me. And it wasn't until a coach pointed out for me that the thought in my head of I don't want to fail, or I don't want to take a risk, or I don't want to be afraid of taking risks, was the thing that was holding me back. And instead, we switched it to something as simple as my life is full of opportunity, and that thought process opened up a whole lot for me as well. And also in that thought process and in that mindset shift for me, I started to learn that my relationship to failure was, I could look at it as almost non-existent, or I could look at my relationship to failure as poor, like we're enemies, I'm enemies with failure because I don't want it in my life. And I'm working on shifting that, and it takes work, friends. So just, again, You Got 5 Minutes today is just what is your relationship to failure, and is that helping you? And so I'm learning for myself that I want to be friends with failure instead of trying to avoid it. And sometimes, I'll be honest, this is not very often, and I find it to be helpful for me. And that is that sometimes I look back on my efforts, especially in my business, but even in my fitness and things, where I look back and I say, how many times did I fail? And I just look at them. I don't dwell on them. I definitely don't sit and dwell and wallow in it. I just look and I say, how many times did things not go as I planned? How many times did things go quote unquote wrong? And I kept going. And I can also look at those. And of course, the other thing we can do in this instance, the other thing I've done in this instance is, what can I learn from this? Okay, I learned that this aspect didn't work well. I learned that I don't like doing that thing for my fitness. So I'm going to look around and I'm going to choose other things that I like more, that I just want to try. Failure can be simply about test and retest, trial and error, and learning from that. And so moving forward, what I want to do for myself is become friends with failure and say, okay, I failed at that. Cool. What else can I learn from it as well? And again, just for today's you got 5 minutes, like examine like what thoughts come up for you during times of failure and ask yourself if it's helping you or hurting you, or I say hurting or holding you back. And just a time to evaluate, because remember, you got 5 minutes are all about finding the roadblocks that are in front of us and making a plan to address them. So anyway, that's what I got for today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
If you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to do any of the following to show your support. Number 1, please rate, review, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening. Number 2, head over to my Buy Me a Coffee page and buy me a coffee. The link is in the show notes. Number 3, share this episode with a friend so they can have more awesome in their life too.